welcome back to the channel. I am yours truly, and today we're going to look at the 2023 Texas Longhorns to do a schedule prediction. Now, to recap what happened last year for Texas in 2022, they went 8-4. They had some incredible wins over Kansas State, probably being their best win of the season, along with some close losses that probably they should have won, including losses to Alabama. Yes, that game, they should have won that game. They also lost to Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and TCU. TCU loss was pretty excusable, but losing to Oklahoma State and Texas Tech was not excusable, and therefore Texas got snubbed for the Big 12 title game last year. Now, this year they have a lot of talent returning on offense and somewhat on defense, so they're expected to be the best team in the Big 12 as they make their last dance in the Big 12 before moving on to the SEC next year. So let's get into the Vegas odds for Texas in 2023. As we take a look at the odds set by the sports books in Vegas in 2023 for Texas, I like to look at these numbers because this is what the betting public feels like a certain team's going to do, meaning this is the people that's willing to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to sports. For the over-under win total for Texas in 2023 is at 9.5. Well, you asked me, well, Dom, there ain't no way you can win 9.5 games. Yeah, that's right. You can't win 9.5 games. This is a number set by Vegas, and this is like an over-under. If you feel confident that Texas is going to go 9-3 or worse, you put your money on the under. If you feel confident that Texas is going to go 10-2 or better, you put your money on the over. So, anyways, the national title odds for Texas this year is at plus 2,200, meaning you put $100 down, and you win. If Texas wins the national title this year, you win $2,200, which that goes for ninth best odds in college football. The team ahead of them is Florida State. The team behind them is Penn State. So you take it out is. For the Big 12 this year, they are the favorite to win the Big 12 this year at plus 105. What that means is you put $100 down and you win $105. $105. So you pretty much double your money if Texas wins the Big 12 this year. So, anyways, let's look at the schedule for Texas in 2023. As we take a look at Texas' schedule briefly in 2023, what I noticed with Texas, the Big 12 gave Texas a hard schedule for 2023 in the conference. They gave them Kansas State, they gave them TCU, they gave them Baylor, and Texas Tech. Now, with most years, the Big 12 would play everybody in conference. Not the case this year, as 4 new teams have come into the conference. Therefore, all Big 12 schedules are not going to be created equally. And obviously, you have the big non-con game against Alabama. Now, let's pick some winners and losers for Texas. For the first game on Texas' schedule, they will have a home game with Rice, and I think this one will probably be a blowout win for Texas. Rice is not a very good group of 5 team, so this should be an easy win. And then the next game they have is their big non-con matchup with Alabama. Last year, this game was down to the wire, close. I don't think Alabama expected it to be that close for them. And a lot of people think that had Quinn Ewers stayed healthy throughout the game, he probably would have won the game against Alabama. But unfortunately, Texas took a loss then. But I think Texas is going to get payback and get a win in Tuscaloosa and beating Alabama. So give Texas the win over Alabama. The next game on Texas' schedule is a home game with Wyoming. Wyoming is a decent group of 5 team. Not terrible, but not great either. They're kind of middle of the road, so I think Texas will be able to steamroll Wyoming by 30, 40 points, somewhere in that range, And then Texas opens their Big 12 conference play with a road trip to Baylor. Now, this is a rivalry game, and this is going to be the last year for the foreseeable future that Texas and Baylor will play for the foreseeable future. So Baylor's going to be pumped up and wanting to beat Texas and give Texas a parting shot out the Big 12. Unfortunately for Baylor, I think Baylor's going to lose to Texas even at home. So give Texas the win over Baylor. Next game on the schedule for Texas is a home game with Kansas. Now, Kansas was a improved team, probably the best team they've had in 15 years last year, as they went 6-6 and made the bowl game. And Kansas has had Texas's number a couple of times in recent memory. I unfortunately do not see Kansas beating Texas on the road for them, so I'm going to say Texas gets the win over Kansas. Now, the next game is the Red River Shootout, and last year this was a massacre. I mean, this game was over on the opening kickoff. I'm not even kidding. Like, Oklahoma could not score any points at all. They were shut out, and I think it was the first ever shutout in the Red River Shootout. Texas ended up beating them 49-0. It was over. It was pretty much over after the first quarter. I think this year Oklahoma's going to be better, and I think they're going to score some points. I unfortunately do not think Oklahoma's going to score enough points to beat Texas, and therefore I think Texas gets probably a 1 to 2 touchdown win over Oklahoma, because even though Oklahoma's a bit behind in Texas, this game's always been. It seems like it's always been close, each and every year, no matter how bad or good the two teams are. So, give Texas the win over Oklahoma for the Red River Shootout. Now, the next two games for Texas, they're going to be facing two of the four new Big 12 teams. Starting off with a road trip to Houston. Now, they get Houston after a bye week, so they're going to have 2 weeks to prepare for Houston. Now, where the bye week is for Texas is a great spot for them, because they get the bye week after the Oklahoma game, which is going to be a big game for them. So they're going to have 2 weeks to prepare for Houston, and I think they're going to take Houston to the woodshed. I believe Houston's going to be one of the worst teams in the Big 12 this year. I do not have a lot of high hopes for Houston, so yeah, give the win to Texas against Houston. And then the next game after that is a home game with BYU. Now, BYU has beaten the brakes off of Texas in the last two meetings that they've had in 2013 and 2014. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think Texas is going to pull away with a 2-touchdown win over BYU at home. The next game on Texas' schedule is a home game with Kansas State. And this game, to me, feels like it's going to be a bit of a trap game, if there is going to be one. Because I just have this feeling that while Texas is a better team on paper than Kansas State, I think this is going to be a type of game that Texas is going to struggle on offense, and it's going to be a struggle day on offense for Texas. And I think Kansas State's going to be able to counter it and run the ball right down Texas's defense and pull off an upset at home for Texas. Because Texas, to me, has the tendency to trip on its own self, especially in the past decade, on games that they should have won, but they didn't win. And therefore, I think Texas comes away with a loss, their first loss of the season against Kansas State. And then the next game on the schedule is a road trip to TCU. This game last year was a defensive struggle. Shocker in the Big 12. TCU struggled, but also Texas struggled. And TCU was able to pull out a touchdown win in Austin. This year it's in TCU. TCU lost a ton of production on offense and their offensive coordinator, along with some other pieces. And I just don't think TCU is going to be as good of a team this year as they were last year. And Texas has got all the talent. So I think Texas pulls out a win against TCU on the road. Next game on the schedule for Texas is a road trip to Iowa State. Iowa State last year was, I believe, the worst team in the Big 12 on record. They didn't even make a bowl game. They went like 4-8. I don't expect Iowa State to turn around to become like a 10-win team like they were a couple of years ago. They still might make a bowl game. I just don't see them making the 10 wins, and I just do not see them beating Texas even at home for them. I know this is a classic trap game venue for Iowa State, or for basically the Big 12. It's kind of the reputation with Iowa State. If you go to Iowa State, you might come out with a loss. So, but I don't think Texas is going to come out with a loss. I think they're going to come out with a win. And then the final game on their schedule is a Friday night game with Texas Tech. And Texas Tech last year took Texas to overtime and beat them in overtime at home. And I think Texas Tech is going to be a dark horse team for the Big 12 this year. I think Texas Tech is going to surprise a lot of people this year in the Big 12. Maybe not make it all the way to the national title game like TCU did last year, but don't be surprised if Texas Tech wins 9 or 10 games this season. And like I mentioned with the Kansas State prediction, Texas has a tendency to trip on its own self and lose games that they shouldn't lose games. Like, for instance, last year, yeah, they were kind of expected to lose to TCU and Alabama, but they weren't expected to lose to Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. Those are two, head-scratching losses for Texas. So I think Texas Tech pulls off a upset here and goes on the road and beats Texas at home. So that wraps up the 2023 schedule prediction for Texas. As you see, according to my prediction, it's a 10-2 record with 2 losses in the Big 12. Now, with this record, most likely you're going to make the Big 12 title game, depending on how other teams play out. I think the Big 12 this year is going to be a 4, maybe 5 team race to make it into the Big 12 title game between Texas, Kansas State, Oklahoma, TCU possibly, and Texas Tech, I think. Now with Tech, now this prediction is a bit of a pessimistic one because we all know Texas has had the talent for years and years now to win the Big 12, but they've constantly fell on their face year after year at Texas. And I think this is the year for Texas to finally win the Big 12 in their last year in the Big 12, to stick it to the Big 12. And if Texas doesn't make the Big 12 title game this year, I think this season would be a disappointment, and there's going to have to be some questions to be asked about Steve Sarkisian if Texas does not make the Big 12 this year, because the talent is there, the schedule is there for Texas to make a Big 12 title run, possibly even a college playoff run if they run the table, or maybe even trip up once. The schedule's there. The ceiling, or the best case scenario for Texas, is a 12-0 season. You beat everybody on the schedule and make it to the Big 12 title game. The worst case scenario for Texas, I think, is a 9-3, possibly 8-4 season. Like 8-4 is kind of stretching it for the worst case scenario, because you might lose to those 2 teams, and the third team possibly would be Oklahoma, and then a 4th team would have to be like a toss up between Iowa State, maybe a BYU, or a TCU, somewhere in that range. But I don't expect them to lose any of those games. So, anyways, if you like the content, like and subscribe to the channel. It will go a long way to boost the channel and put us in the algorithm for more people to see the channel. As always, thank you for watching, and until next time, I am rolling out of here.